Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. And friends, in today's session, I'll be doing a very detailed analysis of Sociology Paper 1 that was asked in 2023. And in this session, I'll be giving you all the proofs that how out of total 28 question of Sociology Paper 1, 22 question could be easily answered directly from our lecture notes as well as Sunya notes. So let's start with the session. So as you can see, I have mentioned various questions that I've asked in 2023, and then I've attached various kind of a screenshot straight from our lecture notes. So the first question read, discuss the relationship between sociology and political science. As you can see, I've attached certain screenshots. So I've already discussed in lot what is sociology, what is political science, and then I've given how the sociology and political science, the domain are overlapping. The subject matter of both sociology as well as political science are one and the same thing. And I've given during lecture a lot of examples just like citizenship, democracy, Sanskritization, alcohol law. And similarly, I've also talked about the differences between the political science as well as sociology in our lecture itself. Then what are the thinkers that you can talk about whenever a question comes with respect to the sociology as well as political science? So this question could be straightforward answered from our lectures. Okay. Then next question is, how does the dramaturgical perspective enable our understanding of everyday life? Now this topic given by Erwin Goffman usually is not covered, but still we covered this topic in lot of detail in our lectures. And where we talked about what is dramaturgy, I have given the definition of dramaturgy. I have talked about Erwin Goffman. I have also talked about in our lecture only what is the front stage, what is the backstage, how dramaturgy act as a theoretical expression of symbolic interaction and I also connected I and me, impression management and everything. Again, this question was straightforward. You can say answered, can be easily answered through our lecture notes. Yet again, is reference group theory a universally applicable model? Elucidate. Again, I discussed in detail what is reference group along with the standard definition of reference group during our lecture. Then I talked about various functions of reference group and how this reference group could be used to answer various kind of an issue that are there in the contemporary society. Just like we can talk about the relative deprivation, anticipatory socialization, self-fulfilling prophecy, any kind of deviant tendencies. All those things could be applied in the society to understand the contemporary issues. Again, do you think that the boundary line between the ethnicity and race is blurred? Justify your answer. Again, in stratification and mobility, unit 5 of paper 1, I discussed in lot of detail what is ethnicity, what is race, what is the difference between the ethnicity and race, along with proper examples, how the difference between the ethnicity and race is decreasing. All those things I've talked about. I've also talked about various kind of things like how the race or the ethnicity act as an unit of stratification. Again, this kind of a question was straightforward, could be answered through our lecture notes. Then, what according to Robert Michel is the iron law of oligarchy? Do lions and foxes in Wilfred Pareto's theory essentially differ from each other? Substantiate. Again, this topic was in lot of detail was covered in our unit 7, that is politics society. I have attached the screenshot again here. See, I've talked about Wilfred Pareto, various kind of characteristics where we talked about lions and foxes of the elites. What are the characteristics of the lions? What are the characteristics of foxes? Then I also talk about Robert Michel iron law of oligarchy, where he conducted a study to support Gaetano Mosca's studies and where he did a SPD study in Germany. All those details were given and you can easily answer this question in a wonderful manner using the content that was given in our lecture itself. Then next is, what is historical materialism? Examine its relevance in understanding contemporary society. Again, this question was very static and it was very easy, especially for those who have joined our Sociology Foundation course at Sunya IAS. As you can see, I've attached the screenshot again here. You can see I've talked about the historical materialism. I've given the proper diagram. I've given various features of the historical materialism. And then again, what is the contemporary significance of the historical materialism? Like how it could be used to understand various kind of a society. It's not only about understanding the capitalist society, but you can also understand feudal society, ancient society, primitive society. It could also help you to understand various kind of a phenomena that is prevalent in society, just like you can talk about various kind of a crime, various kind of a deviant tendencies. All these things I've talked about. Even various kind of you can say measures taken by the government, just like capitalist economy is talking about universal health coverage, just like Obamacare. Even Indian society, they're talking about Narega, BPL cards, all those schemes for the poor people. All those things could be linked with the historical materialism. And all those things I have discussed in our lecture notes. okay, in our Karl Marx. Next is, what are variables? How do they facilitate research? A very, very easy question, straightforward question. Again, I've discussed what are variables. I've given a proper definition of variables. Then what is the significance with respect to conducting of the research, where I talked about like how it gives a focus direction, okay, in conducting a research, how it helps in connecting various kind of variables, okay, establishing a relationship between dependent and independent variables during the research. Again, lot of feeder points were given because this was only 10 markers. You need to give me very, very specific points. Next is, what are the characteristics of scientific method? Do you think that the scientific method in conducting sociological research is foolproof or not? Again, I have talked in detail what is science. Okay, I've given a proper definition. Then what are the characteristics? As you can see, I've given a screenshot here. I've talked about quantifiability, predictability, accuracy, precision. Okay, then reliability, validity, objectivity. And then the second part, do you think that the scientific method is conducting sociological research is foolproof or not? I have given the dimensions for both, that yes, sociology is a science. You can use the same points here and you can write any of the, you can say, argument that you want to elaborate upon. And is sociology a science? Yes. Is sociology a science? No. I've given the points in both the direction. Next is, how do you assess the changing pattern of kinship relation in society today? Again, I've talked in detail what is kinship. I've talked about contemporary changes, trends in kinship only, like how there's a decreased obligation. Okay, there is kind of a low dependence, break in kinship networks, smaller families, increased role of women, more secular society. Now the kinship role with respect to the marriage alliance is not that much significant. So all those things, all those pointers could be used to answer this such kind of a question. Is Weber's idea of bureaucracy a product of the historical experience of Europe? Whenever when I talked about the you can say legitimate authority, that is legal rational authority, a concept given by the Weber, I talked in detail about the background, because he was born in 1864 in the second half of the 19th century, when the industrial revolution was going on, and then how he saw the impact of the industrial revolution, the capitalism on the society, how the people are interacting, how the institution is changing, right? And in this capitalistic economy, various kind of an organization is there which are more efficient, more organized. Their output is increased. Why? Because there's a kind of a bureaucracy that was manning the whole organization. All those things I've talked about the legitimate authority, legal rational authority, features, significance, everything you can use it to answer such kind of a question again. So you can see all these questions that I've written here along with the screenshot, all these questions, direct feeder points were given in our lecture notes. Next is, do you think that the common sense is starting point of social research? What are the advantages and limitations? Explain. Again, 20 marker, very, very easy question. I've talked in detail what is common sense. I've given the definitions of Max Weber, Alfred Schutz. I've also discussed how common sense is same as sociology. So again, when you talk about the advantages, okay, that how common sense could be helpful with respect to conducting a sociological research. And then again, what are the differences? These differences could be used with respect to the limitations. So same feeder points along with various examples that I've quoted during the lectures, you can use it here. Next is, how is poverty a form of social exclusion? Illustrate in this connection the different dimensions of poverty and social exclusion. 20 mark 2 meters. Again, straightforward, it could be answered using our lecture notes. I've talked in detail about the social exclusion along with the examples, along with the standard definition. Then how poverty could be used, how the poverty could be related with the social exclusion, what are the dimensions of the poverty that could be related with the social exclusion. Everything was given in our lecture notes. Highlight the difference and the similarities between the totemism and animism. Very straightforward question. I've talked in detail about the totemism, the Emil Durkheim concept, and I've also talked about the animism, the soul theory given by E.B. Tylor while talking about the totemism. I've also talked about in detail about the animism in our unit, that is religion and society. So you can see the screenshots are given here. And all those points could be used to talk about the similarities as well as the differences between the totemism as well as animism. Animism, the concept given by E.B. Tylor, and totemism, the concept given by Emil Durkheim. Next is, how is civil society useful in deepening the roots of democracy? Again, I've talked about in detail about the civil society. I've talked about civil society as a promoter of democracy. Straightforward points, you can use it. What function does religion perform in pluralistic society? Again, I've talked about religion. I've talked about functions of religion. These functions, feeder points, could be used to answer like what are the functions that religion performs in pluralistic society. Then, does women's education help to eradicate patriarchal discrimination? Reflect with illustrations. Again, I've talked about education as an agent of social change in our unit 10. And when I was talking about education, what is the impact of education at the society level? When I was talking about at the individual level, I was talking about the impact of education for the women. And there I talked about all the positive things, all those, that how the education was helping in completely dismantling the patriarchal structure prevalent in society. All those points could be used to answer this kind of a question. Next, you can talk about what are the different dimensions of qualitative method. Do you think that the qualitative method helps to gain a deeper sociological insight? Give reason for your answer. Again, I talked about in detail along with the standard definition what is qualitative method. I talked about, you can say, different dimension, the characteristics of the qualitative method. And do you think that the qualitative method helps to gain a deeper sociological insight? All the advantages, you can straight away use it to answer such kind of a question. So you can see the questions are direct hit from our, you can say, the lecture notes. Okay. Next is explain Max Weber's theory of social stratification. How does Weber's idea of class different from that of Marx? All the content were given our stratification and mobility, unit 5 of paper 1. I've talked about Max Weber's view. I've talked about Max Weber's view on stratification criticism. Then how the Max Weber view is different from the Marx view with respect to the, you can say, class. Then what are the ethical issues that a researcher faces in making use of the participant observation as a method of collecting data? Explain. I've talked in detail about the participant observation. I've given the proper definition. Then while talking about the advantages and the disadvantages, I've given a lot of points that what are the issues, what are the points that a researcher has to take care, like not to break the trust of the people. Okay, then you can also talk about that they should be informed that they are being observed, whatever data they are being the researchers collecting, they should not leak those data. All those points I have talked about in detail during the lecture. So the people who have been making the running notes during the lecture, that will be really, really helpful to all the students. Next is C. Assess critically Andre Gunder Frank theory of development of underdevelopment. Again, I've discussed a lot with respect to Andre Gunder Frank theory, dependency theory, where I talked about the core and peripheral countries. And plus it is critically, so I've talked about the positive as well as the negative of that particular theory, dependency theory as well. Again, what is Taylorism? Analyzes merits and demerits. Again, you can see the screenshot. I've talked about the Taylorism, what are the advantages as well as disadvantages. And the last question, what are the new religious movements? Elaborate, emphasizing their forms and orientation. Again, we have discussed in detail. It is mentioned in our Sunya notes, paper 1. And I've mentioned the unit 8. Unit is religion and society. I've talked about the page number as well, 427, 428 and 429. And I've also mentioned the subunit name, 8.3.6 and 8.3.7. So you can see here that out of 28 questions, 22 questions were a direct hit from our lecture notes. Okay, the people who have been making the running notes of the lecture, they would find this paper quite easy. And you can see it is staggering, more than 75% were direct hit. Okay, and let's look into the other questions. And if you can look into all these other questions, the people who have joined our Sociology Foundation course at Sunya IAS, if you have been looking at the lecture on a regular basis, I have discussed various things at various points. So if you have proper conceptual clarity, all these questions except one, you will be able to write it. Just like if you look into what is the distinctiveness of the feminist method of social research, while talking about the major theoretical strand of research methodology during our unit 2, I have discussed about various kind of waves of feminism. I was talking about intersectionality. That is one of the, you can say, distinctiveness of the feminist method. Okay, even in unit 3, where I talked about the quantitative, qualitative, then techniques of data collection, I talked about in detail about the Anne Oakley methods. Okay, that how she was talking about that there should be a proper coordinated relationship between the researcher and the subject. Okay, while she was doing a research on the childbirth and the pregnancy. So all these points you can use it here to enrich your answer. Next is examine the relevance of corporate social responsibility in the world marked by increased environmental crisis. Again, a kind of a very, very generic topic. You can easily talk about what is corporate social responsibility, because we have been discussing all those things in our paper 2 as well. And you can simply talk about the sustainable agriculture, energy efficiency, sustainable transportation. We're talking about the waste management. All those points you can talk about in this question. Next is explain how the economic globalization has brought changes in pattern of employment in our 21st century. See, in our unit 6, that is work economic life, where I'm talking about in detail with respect to the impact of globalization as far as the work is concerned. I've given a lot of points with respect to how the globalization has been impacting the work culture, just like we talk about There is a kind of transnational workforce that is being created. There's a kind of a digital nomads. Okay, the people, they are able to work from their home. And plus you can also talk about that because of the revolution, because of the globalization, all those things, because of increased connectivity, there's also kind of women empowerment. So I was giving a lot of positive points here which you can use it to answer such question. Next is question number 7b. Do you think that the social media has brought significant change in the form of protest? Argue your case. See, whenever you talk about the social media, especially in paper, like in paper 2, when you talk about politics, society, we talk about the protest. So I've talked about the media aspect as well. I've given a detailed brief intro about the social media. I've also talked about with respect to that how media was emerging as an agent of social change in our unit 10 of paper 1 as well. Okay, where you can talk about that how it emerged as a kind of a democratic tool, how it is leading to led to a kind of rise of protest that is giving global character. Okay, a small any kind of an injustice could be easily highlighted through social media, right? It could also lead to the increased collective conscience, okay, of the society. And through social media, when you're talking about any injustice done in any part of the world, just like George Floyd case or any Me Too movement, all those things could lead to what? It could lead that a person, any person who is unaware of any kind of a justice, can simply highlight it. And if they are able to highlight it, you don't need any kind of a central leadership to go for the protest. Okay, so all those things you can talk about here. Last is examine the role of science and technology in addressing age-old taboos and superstitions. See, when I talking about unit 2 science, I was talking about that how science was helping in conducting a sociological in a scientific manner. Even in unit 10, I was talking about science and technology as an agent of social change. All those points that I have given there, you can use it here as well, just like developing a scientific temper, talking about the logics, talking about predictions. If you are able to look into all the explanation in a very rational, logical manner. Okay, if you are calculating your move, you will be able to predict also your move, right? So all these points you can use it here. The only question that was a bouncer for the student was question number 5D, and this was by David Morgan's view on family practices. And this was a very, very specific question. Only if you know this question, you would be able to answer it, because he was talking about to understand the family. He was not focusing upon the structure of the family, whether the family is joint family system or the nuclear family system, but he was trying to understand the family through various kind of practices the family indulges into. Just like you can talk about that how the family members, they are able to identify that we are the family members, they are not the family members, how they are setting the boundary line, that who are family members, who are not the part of family members. Then you can also talk about various kind of practices, like how to understand the family through various kind of passive activities, not the active activities. Passive activities, even just like sleeping. Sleeping is one of the passive activities. So if you understand family, if you want to understand family, you can observe their sleeping patterns, like what are the sleeping places for different kind of members, how they are sleeping. Okay, just like he also focusing upon to understand the family, focus upon their everyday activities, just like how the breakfast, that is an everyday activity that is made, whether any particular person is only making a breakfast or the members of the family are coming together making a breakfast, and how it is actually consumed, whether the family members, they are collectively coming and consuming the breakfast, or every person is eating the breakfast in their own room. And then also how this breakfast, which is an everyday activity, is completely different from the less mundane activities, just like wedding. So this was a very specific question, and the people have scored really well, because other questions were direct hits. So what they did is, toppers especially, they avoided this question, because if you're writing, because this was a very, very specific question, they're talking about the David Morgan's view. So if you're writing other questions really beautiful, and if you're writing something absurd, not a very relevant and redundant content you're writing here, this will going to give a very negative impact on the examiner. So it was better to avoid writing such kind of question, because this was a bouncer to everyone. Okay, so friends, as I've shown you in this session, in paper 1, out of 28 questions, 22 questions were a direct hit from our sociology optional foundation course at Sunya IAS. Especially the students who have been making the running notes of the lectures, they will find this paper very, very easy. Okay, and who have been listening to the lectures very diligently. And other questions they could also answer, except this question, that is David Morgan's view on family practice, that was bounced to everyone. Okay, so staggering more than 75% was a hit from our lecture notes. So that will be all, friends. Thank you and all the best.